There's a brown bottle sitting in your bathroom cabinet right now that costs about $1. And the lawn and garden industry really hopes you never figure out what it can do, because that little bottle of hydrogen peroxide can quietly replace a whole shelf of expensive garden products. It's basically water with one extra oxygen atom, and that tiny difference makes it a secret weapon. Let's get into it. Number 1, the seed germination booster you never have to buy again. Let's start with the one that sounds like a myth, but actually holds up in the lab. Those little packets of seed primer and germination boosters at the garden center. A capful of peroxide does the same job. Here's the wild part. When you soak seeds in a diluted hydrogen peroxide solution before planting, germination can speed up dramatically. Studies have shown improvements ranging from around 15% on the low end all the way up to nearly doubling the sprout rate on stubborn seeds. Treatment with hydrogen peroxide nearly doubled germination of Atlantic white cedar in one study, and research on sugar beet seed confirmed the same effect. It works in two ways at once. The peroxide gently softens the tough seed coat so water can rush in faster, and it kills the surface-borne fungal spores that would otherwise rot a seedling right at the moment it's trying to sprout. To do it, mix 1 tablespoon of standard 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 cup of room temperature water. Drop your seeds in and let them soak, about 15 minutes for tiny seeds like lettuce and basil, and up to 30 minutes for big, hard-coated seeds like beans, squash, and beets. Then plant as usual. Old seed packets you'd written off as dead, this is how you bring them back to life. Number 2, the root rot treatment that costs almost nothing. If you've ever pulled an overwatered plant out of its pot and been hit with that swampy rotten egg smell, you've met root rot. And most people either toss the plant or run out and buy a pricey commercial root rot drench. You don't have to. Root rot is what happens when soil stays soggy, oxygen disappears, and anaerobic fungi and water molds move in and start eating the roots. Hydrogen peroxide fixes the exact conditions that caused it. As garden and greenhouse experts explain, when peroxide decomposes, it releases oxygen and water, and that burst of oxygen re-aerates the soil, giving roots access to the air they've been starving for while killing the pathogens at the same time. To use it as a rescue, gently remove the plant, loosen the soil, and snip away any mushy, dark, rotted roots with clean scissors. Then mix 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide with 1 part water and spray the roots thoroughly before repotting into fresh, well-draining soil. For lighter cases, you can drench the soil with a solution of about 1 tablespoon of 3% peroxide per cup of water. The soil will fizz. That's the oxygen going to work. Number 3, the fungus gnat killer hiding in your medicine cabinet. Fungus gnats are the little black flies that swarm up out of your houseplant soil the second you water it. There's an entire aisle of sticky traps, sprays, and larvae drenches aimed at them. Skip it. The reason gnats are so hard to beat is that the adults you swat are only half the problem. The real damage is done by the larvae living in the top inch of soil, feeding on your roots. And that's exactly where peroxide shines. A soil drench targets those larvae directly, disrupting their development and stopping the next generation before it ever takes flight. Wait until the top layer of soil has dried out, since gnats lay eggs in moist soil. Then mix 1 part 3% hydrogen peroxide with 4 parts water and drench the soil the way you'd normally water. It'll fizz on contact, killing larvae and eggs, then break down harmlessly into water and oxygen. Repeat each time you water until the swarm is gone. It's cheaper than a single pack of traps, and it hits the part of the life cycle those traps completely miss. Number 4, the fungicide that's backed by actual research. Powdery mildew, that white dusty coating that shows up on squash, cucumbers, roses, and zinnias, sends people straight to the store for chemical fungicides. But one of the most reliable mildew treatments is already in your house. Peroxide works because that extra oxygen atom breaks away and ruptures the cell walls of the fungus, so it can't reproduce or spread. And this isn't just internet folklore. In a published horticultural study, spraying cucumber leaves with a hydrogen peroxide solution dropped powdery mildew severity from around 90% all the way down to about 12%. That's performance that rivals commercial antifungal compounds. Mix roughly 1 part 3% peroxide to 2 parts water for a mild solution, and spray the entire plant, tops of leaves, undersides, and stems. The timing matters. Spray in the early morning or evening, never in the midday sun, because sunlight makes the peroxide break down before it can do its job. And catch it early. Like most fungicides, peroxide is far better at stopping mildew in its tracks than curing a plant that's already coated head to toe. Number 5. The bug spray for aphids, mites, and mealybugs. Insecticidal soaps and bug sprays add up fast, especially when you've got a real infestation. For soft-bodied pests, diluted peroxide is a genuine alternative, and it's actually recognized as a pesticide ingredient, listed by the EPA as an approved active ingredient exempt from standard registration. Here's how it kills them. Aphids, spider mites, mealybugs, and whitefly nymphs all have delicate outer membranes and exoskeletons. When peroxide makes direct contact, that oxidizing action ruptures those membranes. No nervous system poison required. It works on the mealybug eggs hiding in your soil too. For leaf pests, mix 1 part of 3% hydrogen peroxide with 3 or 4 parts of water. Pour it in a spray bottle and coat the pests directly, especially the undersides of leaves where they hide. For mealybugs in the soil, use that same 4-to-1 dilution as a drench once the top of the soil has dried. Always spray in the cool part of the day to avoid leaf burn, and do a small test patch first because tender new growth can be sensitive. One honest note, peroxide is more of a contact knockdown and deterrent than a magic bullet, so consistency and repeat applications beat any single spray. Number 6, the soil aerator and oxygen booster. Walk down the soil aisle and you'll find bags of soil conditioner and aeration additives promising to loosen up your dirt. A splash of peroxide in your watering can does something similar for free. The idea is beautifully simple. Rainwater naturally contains a tiny bit of hydrogen peroxide, which is one reason plants often perk up so noticeably after a real storm versus tap water. When you add peroxide to your watering routine, you're mimicking that. The extra oxygen molecule releases into the soil, helping to break up compacted, stagnant dirt and delivering oxygen straight to the root zone, even in heavy clay or tired container mix. Mix about half a cup of 3% hydrogen peroxide into 1 gallon of water and use it to water your plants no more than once every week or two. Roots love it. The harmful anaerobic microbes don't. Just don't overdo it. Too much, too often, will also knock back the beneficial soil life you want to keep. So treat this as an occasional tune-up, not an everyday habit. Number 7, the garden tool sterilizer. Every time you prune a diseased branch and move to the next plant with the same blades, you're potentially spreading infection across your whole garden. There are commercial tool disinfectants for this, but peroxide does it instantly and leaves no residue. Hydrogen peroxide kills bacteria, fungi, and viruses on contact, which makes it perfect for cleaning pruners, shears, shovels, and trowels between plants. And unlike bleach, it won't corrode your metal tools or leave a lingering chemical film. It just breaks down into water and oxygen. Pour undiluted 3% peroxide straight into a spray bottle. Spray your tools thoroughly or soak small items for 5 to 10 minutes, then wipe them clean or let them air dry. No rinsing needed. Get in the habit of doing this between plants when you're pruning anything that looks sick, and you'll stop a single infection from becoming a garden-wide disaster. Number 8, the pot and seed tray cleaner. Reusing last year's pots and seed trays without cleaning them is one of the quietest ways gardeners sabotage themselves. Those pots carry leftover salts, dried plant gunk, and worse, the fungal spores and bacteria that killed whatever grew there before. People buy special pot cleaners or bleach for this. Peroxide is better. When you apply peroxide to a dirty pot, it foams, and that foaming reaction physically lifts caked-on dirt, old roots, and hidden pests off the surface. On top of the scrubbing power, it's naturally antifungal and antibacterial, so it sanitizes at the same time and dramatically cuts the risk of passing disease to your next batch of plants. Mix equal parts 3% hydrogen peroxide and water. Wipe or scrub down the insides and rims of your pots and trays, then rinse. It's cheap, it's fast, and it gives every new seedling a genuinely clean start instead of inheriting last season's problems. Number 9, the damping off preventer that saves entire seedling trays. If you've ever watched a whole tray of healthy seedlings flop over and die practically overnight, you've been hit by damping off, a fast-moving fungal disease that attacks seedlings at the soil line. It's heartbreaking, and there are products sold specifically to prevent it. Peroxide replaces them. Research on soil treatments found that peroxide significantly reduced damping off and root rot severity, working as a broad-spectrum fungicide by making fungal cells brittle and leaky. Master gardeners tell the same story from experience, losing an entire tray of seedlings once, then never losing one again after they started sterilizing their trays with diluted peroxide before sowing. The move is prevention. Before you sow, sanitize your seed trays and starting mix with a 1-to-1 solution of 3% peroxide and water. You can also lightly mist the surface of your seed, starting medium to knock out spores before they get a foothold. Pair that with drier soil and good airflow, and damping off basically stops being a threat. Number 10, the transplant shock tonic. Those transplant tonics and root stimulators marketed to ease plants into a new pot? A little peroxide covers the same ground for pennies. When you move a plant, its young roots are stressed, wounded, and vulnerable to rot in fresh, wet soil. Garden pros use peroxide here specifically because the extra shot of oxygen supports healthy root formation and helps delicate roots push through the shock of transplanting. It also sanitizes the freshly disturbed root zone, so opportunistic fungi can't move into the wounds. The dilution here is gentle. Use a couple of tablespoons of 3% hydrogen peroxide per quart of water, and use that to water plants in when you're moving them into a new pot or bed, or when you're starting root cuttings. The experts are firm on one thing though: go easy. Overusing it can damage those same tender young roots you're trying to protect, so this is a light touch at transplant time, not a repeated feed. Number 11, the cut flower preservative. Those little packets of flower food that come with a bouquet and the pricey bottles sold at florists are mostly doing one job: keeping bacteria out of the vase water. Peroxide does that job on its own. When cut flowers wilt after just a couple of days, the usual culprit is bacteria multiplying in the water and clogging the cut stems so they can't drink. Peroxide keeps that water clean and clear, and research on cut lilies has shown noticeably longer vase life under these conditions. Add about half a tablespoon of 3% peroxide per cup of vase water, or a teaspoon of peroxide plus a teaspoon of sugar per quart. The sugar feeds the blooms while the peroxide handles the bacteria. It keeps roses, tulips, and daisies looking fresh for several extra days and stops that cloudy, murky vase water before it starts. Refresh it every couple of days for the best results. Number 12, the bird bath and fountain algae remover. That green slimy film that takes over bird baths, fountains, and garden statues in summer is algae thriving in warm, stagnant water. Most algaecides you'd buy are harsh, and a lot of them aren't safe around wildlife. Peroxide clears the algae and then disappears. Instead of dumping chemicals where birds drink, scrub the basin with hydrogen peroxide. It oxidizes the algae cells and loosens that green gunk, restoring the water's clarity. And afterward, it breaks down into nothing but water and oxygen, so it won't harm the birds or the environment. For a bird bath, empty it, then apply a 1-to-1 mix of 3% peroxide and water. Let it sit a few minutes, scrub, and rinse thoroughly before refilling. For a larger fountain or pond, a much smaller dose stirred into the water helps hold algae back. One important caveat: if your feature holds fish, most standard peroxide products aren't approved for use with them, so stick to a proper fish-safe product in those cases. Number 13, the hydroponic reservoir sanitizer and oxygenator. Hydroponic growers spend real money on additives to keep their water clean and oxygenated, and to fight the dreaded root rot that spreads through a recirculating system. Peroxide has been a grower's secret for years. Standing nutrient water tends to go stale, lose oxygen, and grow unwanted microbes, the perfect setup for slimy roots and crashing plants. Adding hydrogen peroxide sanitizes that stale water while delivering a welcome burst of oxygen straight to the root zone, which is exactly what a hydro system needs to stay healthy. It also helps hold back algae in the reservoir. A common approach is roughly 1 tablespoon of 3% peroxide per gallon of reservoir water added in to keep things clean and oxygenated. Because peroxide loses potency once it's mixed and does its work quickly, growers dose regularly rather than all at once. It's a fraction of the cost of specialty hydroponic cleaners doing the very same thing. Number 14, the bacterial leaf spot spray. Those dark, wet-looking lesions that appear on leaves and spread every time it rains or you water overhead, that's often bacterial leaf spot, and gardeners frequently reach for copper fungicides to fight it. Peroxide is a gentler first line of defense. Because peroxide kills bacteria on contact, it can knock back the infection on the leaf surface and slow it from spreading to healthy foliage, all without the heavy metal residue that comes with copper sprays. Mix about 3 tablespoons of 3% hydrogen peroxide with 1 quart of water. Spray the affected plants lightly, doing your best to avoid open flowers and buds, and apply every 3 days for about a week. As always, spray in the evening rather than under direct midday sun to prevent leaf burn. Between applications, pull off the worst infected leaves and improve airflow around the plant, and you give the peroxide a real chance to win. Number 15, the used soil sterilizer that saves you from buying new. Here's the sneaky one almost nobody thinks about. Quality potting mix is expensive, and most people dump last year's soil and buy fresh every season, partly because old mix is loaded with leftover pests, molds, and plant pathogens. You can save that soil instead of buying a soil sterilizer product or a whole new bag. A peroxide drench through used potting mix helps wipe out the lingering insects, fungal spores, and disease organisms hiding in it, so you can safely reuse the soil rather than throwing money in the trash bin. Drench the mix with a diluted peroxide solution. Let it fizz and do its work, and let it dry out. There's one crucial follow-up. Peroxide doesn't tell the difference between harmful microbes and the beneficial ones that make soil alive. So after you sterilize, you have to rebuild the biology by mixing in fresh compost or worm castings. Do that, and you've turned a bag of exhausted, disease-carrying dirt back into healthy, living soil for the price of a capful. For everything on this list, the standard 3% hydrogen peroxide from the drugstore is the right strength. Never pour the concentrated 12% or 35% stuff straight onto plants, because anything above 3% will scorch leaves and burn roots. Always spot test a couple of leaves before you spray a whole plant. Mix your solution fresh, since peroxide weakens once diluted, and treat in the morning or evening instead of the harsh midday sun. So the next time you're about to spend real money on a shelf full of garden products, remember that dollar bottle in your cabinet doing 15 jobs at once. If this saved you some cash, hit that like button and share it with a fellow gardener, and subscribe with notifications on so you never miss a video. Thanks for watching.